Hello friend, how is it going? Welcome back to Auto Resource YouTube channel. You are looking with me on our own 2004 E350 XL Clubwagon. Through our ownership we built little weekend warrior with it. We have a very simple bed inside, that deck on the roof, and here the ladder, you can see it. We really like this rig, and I like to be on top of the maintenance. All the brakes, engine oil, transmission fluid and so on. Also part of the maintenance on these rigs are the front wheel bearings, and I'm pretty sure I have excessive play on this side, on the driver's side. When it was still on the ground, I grabbed that wheel and I was able to feel a little bit of play and clicking in it. Let's hear together and see what we can hear up in the air here. Do you hear that? And I definitely feel a little bit of play. We are on the passenger, and as you can hear, there's none on this side. So this procedure will be for E250, E350 and E450, which has those 8 lug nuts. If you had an E150, you have only 5, and it might be, the procedure might be slightly different. I am Toyota guy, so in my case it will be all in millimeters, so it's a 22 millimeter socket. Oh yeah. Let me bring you closer to that brake rotor. You can see everything is lubricated. As I said, I'm trying to have it in the tip-top shape for our weekend travels. This is basically almost brand new, because when we bought the vehicle, both front calipers were actually seized, and I was replacing the brake pads and was pushing the pistons back. Some of them were fully seized, so that was replaced together with the brand new brake pads. So let's go to this front wheel bearing adjustment, which is hiding underneath that cap. And when we bought the van, I also purchased factory repair manuals. So might be for different years. I told you ours it's 2004, but the procedure is the same, and we will actually perfectly follow the factory prescribed adjustment, which is here in these steps. And to get inside, we have to remove that little dust cap, which is right here. I normally use a chisel like this and very carefully, without damaging it, I will be able to take it off. And that's basically that dust cap, which protects the bearing and all these parts from the dust, basically dirt and sand. Here is for you a little close-up so you can see perfectly the detail, and hopefully in the detail you recognize this quarter pin, which is locking this part, which is the nut, adjusting nut retainer. So we are removing that quarter pin. I'm using this needle nose pliers. I will pull it up. Hopefully, you see, this is that nut, the crown nut or securing nut, and here is the adjusting nut, which we will be working with right now. I'm only adjusting it today, not servicing it, but I can always try to put more grease in the bearing, which is there. Right now I'm touching the nut, but I can bring more grease and try to force it inside. So here you can see one of the examples of greases you can use. This one came CarQuest, and it says high temp disc brake wheel bearing grease. So that's one of the possible lubricants for these wheel bearings. To achieve absolute perfect conditions for this adjustment, I will actually remove this entire brake assembly, because it's constantly, as you can see, you cannot rotate this or spin it freely because it's constantly affecting the position and movement of the rotor. So there are two bolts, one here, one on the bottom, and I will put it on the side. I will hang it on the hanger on the side. Here you can see these two bolts removed. It's hanging on the steel hanger. You don't want to hang it on the brake line because it's so heavy it could actually damage the brake line. And as I said, I'm Toyota guy, so I brought here the table and I will be reading it step by step from that factory manual, so we do it perfectly. So I have an electronic torque wrench right here. I will use the Newton meters because that's what I do always, but I will read you also the standard numbers. So the first task is, while rotating the brake disc and the hub, tighten the spindle nut to the 40 Newton meters, which is basically 30 foot-pounds of torque. So they say keep rotating it and put 40 on it. Did you hear that? So I put, it reads 41.5. Now they say the step number 2 will be loosen the spindle nut, complete 2 turns. Here I am back, so they say, yeah, that was tight. 1, 2 turns, right? Full 2 turns. Now they say tighten the spindle nut while rotating the brake disc and hub using 25 Newton meters, which is approximately 18 foot-pounds. I had to switch the torque wrench because the small one just gave up. Who will ever think that the snap-on torque wrench can give up, huh? So I have 25 Newton meters on this little monster. Now let's put it on, and because on the other side here is the tray, it's in my way, I will use it this way, as they say, as you are turning it, put it 25 Newton meters. Did you hear that? That's exactly 25 right there. They say again, loosen the spindle nut. They don't say how many turns, they just say loosen it. So I'm loosening it. I can feel it's loose. And now, believe it or not, that's a very little torque. I'm supposed to use only 2 Newton meters, which this will probably not even take because it's too big. Let's see. Oh, you see that? It starts at 17 Newton meters, and the other one, it's broken. So this is a big fail, but 2 Newton meters, it's very, very little torque. Guess what? I found out what was the problem on the small one. I thought I'm using it very often. Will it go down to the... Oh, this doesn't go either to the 2 Newton meters. It stops at 7. The problem was right here on that contact. There was a green oxidation on it. Look at it. It was becoming funky. Now when I tire it, it goes immediately on. So we can depend on those snap-on tools after all. Unfortunately, this starts at 7 Newton meters. What's about old style? Craftsman will save the world, huh? Accuracy guaranteed to 2% for life of the tool. It starts from 0 to 100 foot-pounds. 2 Newton meters, or whatever we are talking these numbers. It's just a very little last torque. What you are doing, you're confirming you don't over-tire it, because you don't want to overheat and put extra stress on that bearing which is inside. So I can recheck with that 27 millimeter socket, just a very little torque. I'm watching here the scale. So far it's not doing anything, but it's coming, yep, it's slightly moving. So I will recheck this. Still perfectly running. It's basically, look, it sits by its weight. I hope you can see it. It's almost putting 0 torque. I will put very little pressure on it, and that's where I will end up. Yep, it's all learning how you want to measure 2 Newton meters, right? It's a very, very little torque. I can already see, I remembered where the top of the nut was pointing. I can already see it's a little bit, tiny bit more tight, few degrees. This time our adjustment moved that nut tiny bit to the right. So we definitely made a change. I don't hear any grinding. It freely moves. And when we will put the wheel back, obviously I don't feel any play in it right now, but when we will put the wheel back, you will see there will be no play in it. Now I will need to install this nut retainer, and I will install it the way that I will be able to put the cotter pin through this opening. So I have to look that it's matching. It's not matching this way, not this way, but it's perfectly matching this way. I'm putting cotter pin in, because that we have very little torque on that nut, and that retainer will be holding the nut from turning and undoing itself. So now back to the pliers. Install the cotter pin correctly, and I will bend both of these sides on the here one side. You can hopefully see it if I'm not getting too much in your way. Here is the other one. Alright, so now everything is secured. That nut cannot loosen itself. It will stay in this adjusted position. The last thing, it's installed that grease cap, that protective cap. It's probably the best to bring a wrapper mallet or dead blow hammer so I don't damage it. And if I'm correct, oh yeah, here a little bit. Oh yeah, you heard that? It actually reached its end. It's perfectly in. So now comes the moment truth. Did we do it right? Bearing, checking bearing 12 and 6. This will be steering, right? Which has a tiny plate, but this is the bearing. You remember that banging? it's nothing. Yet it really spins because I didn't apply the brake yet, and the brakes are not closer to the brake rotor. So there's zero play in the wheel bearing. That banging and clicking is fixed, and this is a happy van again. I hope you find this video helpful, and please make sure you are subscribed, because I have always more coming your way on this channel soon. Thank you for watching, and have a great day, my friend.